looking to see how much we're growing. The only boy who could ever reach me. What a son of a trick shot. Man, you're not the only boy who could ever teach me. What a son of a trick shot. Yes, he was. Hallelujah, he was. He was. Hallelujah. Son of a trick shot. Hallelujah for the son now, yeah. Son of a trick shot. Hallelujah, yeah. Son of a trick shot. For the son, hallelujah for the son now. Son of a trick shot. He's the only boy, yes he is, who could ever reach me. Son of a trick shot. He's the only boy who could ever teach me.
Where others meet insurmountable challenges, Tillman scholars, nurses, engineers, artists, and scientists see a calling to come together in ways with through the next generation of leaders that have forced this nation to don't quit, and the world will be stronger for it.
There aren't enough leaders in the world that lead like Pat did, selflessly, through their actions, collaboratively, with a commitment to impact and with an intellectual curiosity. Our foundation doesn't just exist to reward service members and military spouses with scholarships. We exist to grow a generation of leaders who embrace intellectual curiosity, who act selflessly, and who lead through action to transform their communities and the world.
What makes our community so special is that we all have a purpose to change the world, regardless of our race, religious affiliation, or socioeconomic status.
Part of the reason that I applied to the Tillman Scholars was that passion. They're not doing this because they have to. They're not doing this for accolades. They're not doing this to further their career. They're doing this because they care.
Being a Tillman Scholar is like a lifelong journey, right? That's something that I was told at the very beginning of this. And being a part of that for a long term just kind of reminds me on a day-to-day basis, like I'm not alone in wanting to change the world for the better.
There have been so many adjectives used to describe Pat's legacy: great, selfless, honorable, courageous. So to be tasked to carry on his legacy, my prayer is that my research, my service, and my leadership will have the propensity to create change in the world.
So that was our brand new video, and that's the first time I've seen it, and it's awesome. Stevie and crew, really well done, really powerful to see. And that's our show. I think we're good. So that's a tremendous welcome to Tillman Honors. My name is Alex Garwood. I was Pat's brother-in-law. I co-founded the Pat Tillman Foundation with Marie, with Pat's family and friends, following his death in 2004. However, I like to think that Pat really started this foundation. I like to think that the way he lived his life and the inspiration that he provided and shared with us is actually what started this foundation. So it's an honor to return here today as your MC, in person no less. This time I'm actually wearing pants. It's an awesome opportunity for us to celebrate Pat's legacy and to celebrate the lives through which this perseverance and passion of the Tillman Scholars and how they exemplify Pat's life. So my wife, Christine, and Marie Tillman are sisters. It means Pat and I were smart enough to marry our high school sweethearts. And I will tell you that outside of the relationship that I have with Christine and raising our sons, the most meaningful thing I've ever known in my life is my relationship with Pat. And so it was certainly true during his life, his ability to connect people and bring people together, to put them together at a giant table A. It's also true at a time like this, in a special time when we gather. So speaking of which, this is a very special Tillman Honors. This is the first in-person event that we've been able to hold since the pandemic started in 2020. And we are truly thrilled to bring our community together in person after being apart for so long. And so we want to say a very special welcome to those who are on the live stream at tillmanhonors.com. So whether you're in this room or in the cloud, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here and honoring my friend. We'd like to take a moment and acknowledge our Tillman Scholars. So each year we select men and women based on their commitment to the values that Pat believed in so strongly. And for our scholars that are joining us on the live stream, but also here in the room, please take a moment and stand. It is our honor to support you. It is our honor to support you. We're glad to be able to bring you together and celebrate your values, Pat's values, and our honorees. And our scholars, you might have noticed, are wearing a small blue ribbon. If you see one of them, say hi. You've already had the chance to break bread with them. But say hi. Ask them about how they're making an impact in their communities or elsewhere in the world. And like our scholars, the honorees that we celebrate today embody Pat's belief in something bigger than himself, that anyone can make an impact, that people actually do, and that changes in the world, most of all, represent his deep commitment to service to others. So first, we want to honor and acknowledge Fawzia Koofi, who is our champion awardee. She'll be joining us later today via video. Fawzia is a human rights activist and politician. She was the first girl in her family to go to school, and through her devotion to education, earned her master's degree in human rights and international relations before becoming the first woman to serve as Deputy Speaker of Parliament in her native Afghanistan. But it's not Fawzia's personal accomplishments that inspire us, or it's not only her personal accomplishments. It's her unending efforts to ensure that women across the world, and especially in Afghanistan, have the right to education and to participate in all facets of public life, and that all Afghans can someday live in peace. We also want to honor and acknowledge our Make Your Mark awardees. When U.S. forces left Afghanistan this year, dozens of our scholars sprung into action to assist in finding, evacuating, and resettling Afghan families. So this year, we're doing something a little different and giving this award not to an individual, but to a group of several dozen scholars who contributed to this intense and ongoing collective effort. Tillman Scholars Kate Hoit, Junaid Lughmani, and Rick Schumacher will accept the award on their behalf. We are grateful to them and to everyone who continues to support what's become known as Operation Digital Dunkirk. And it's that effort that underscores our mission to empower our Tillman Scholars, remarkable veterans and military spouses as the next generation of leaders. When challenging times called for leadership, our scholars stepped up and showed the way. That is what we are here to do. That's why we're here. It's what we do. And today's celebration would not be possible without the incredible generosity of our presenting sponsor, the National Football League, or NFL. They believe deeply in the potential and impact of our Tillman Scholars, and a special thank you to our presenting sponsor, our major sponsor, Tech Systems, as well as many other investors. Thank you for all your support through the year, and of course, today. And so next, I'd like to welcome Meg Cortese. She's from Tech Systems, our major sponsor and a partner to the Pat Tillman Foundation for many years. Meg?
Thanks, Alex. Good afternoon, everybody. It's my honor to be here today to be part of this event and support the Tillman Scholars. My name is Meg Cortese, and I'm the Vice President of Employee Experience at Tech Systems. We're a global provider of business, technology, and talent solutions. And our commitment at Tech Systems expands way beyond business. We also seek to drive positive impacts in our communities. We've been a proud partner of the Pat Tillman Foundation now for over 6 years. And the work of the Pat Tillman Foundation aligns with our company purpose, which is to create significant opportunity for people. You might say that there's other organizations and foundations out there that have similar missions and purposes, and you'd be right. But what we find unique and special about the Pat Tillman Foundation is that it's action-oriented. This foundation is helping to develop the next generation of leaders, leaders who are ready and able to enact significant change in their communities. TEKsystems' support of the Pat Tillman Foundation ties to our company's larger commitment to support U.S. active military, veterans, and their spouses. We recognize that being in the military provides servicemen and servicewomen with special skills and a work ethic that is second to none. TEKsystems helps to leverage that experience to help those individuals build their next career. So again, I'm grateful to be here and celebrate Pat's legacy through the Tillman Scholar Program. To the scholars, thank you. Continue to be a catalyst for change in your communities through the work that you've set out to do. Some of you are working for equal health care for all of our citizens, while others are fighting on behalf of fostered youth. Whatever you're working toward, an MBA, a law degree, or something altogether different, you are advocates, you're change agents, and you're enablers. You're paving the way for the next generation of scholars, and that's very inspiring. Thank you so much. I'd like to now introduce Marie Tillman, the chair and co-founder of the Pat Tillman Foundation.
Thank you, Meg, and thank you, TEKsystems, for your partnership. We're so grateful to you for your investment in our scholars and in the future that we're all building together. Today is one of my favorite days of the year as we come together to celebrate Pat's legacy and how it lives on through the Tillman Scholars and so many others. After such a difficult time in the world, it means a great deal to me to bring all of us together in this room. Investors, supporters, Tillman Scholars, our incredible staff, our honorees, and featured speakers today. I also want to give a special thanks to Alex, our MC, as well as today's honorees and our Make Your Mark talkers. Since 2004, we've made it our mission to find these remarkable service members, veterans, military spouses, and to empower them as the next generation of leaders through academic scholarships, lifelong leadership development, and of course, a supportive community of mentors and peers who are with them each step. Everyone in this room is a critical part of this community, a community that embodies the living legacy of Pat, and our mission would not be possible without your generosity, support, and mentorship. Thank you for empowering our Tillman community to continue serving at home and around the world to make a difference. This event and all that we do would also not be possible with our amazing team at the Pat Tillman Foundation. So I also want to give a special thank you to Dan, Stevie, Mark, and the whole staff and everything that went into today and all the great work that you do every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. It's funny. I'm supposed to read these remarks. She's an incredible person. I've known her, it's what's crazy, it's almost her whole life, and her inspiration and what she's done with this foundation in Pat's name is awesome. So thank you for your leadership, for the foundation, you know, for Pat, for our friend, and for our board and all that you do. Thank you, Marie. So while Tillman Honors is an opportunity for us to recognize our champion and Make Your Mark awardees, as we will later in the event, it's also a time for us to acknowledge the breadth and importance of the leadership and impact shown by our Tillman Scholars. So each year we select 3 Tillman Scholars to offer a short presentation on their research and work. They're known as Make Your Mark Talks, and these conversations highlight the range of fields and communities in which Tillman Scholars make their impacts. This year, our speakers reflect on new treatments for traumatic brain injuries, on how accepting yourself leads to connectedness, and the challenges that immigrants and families of color can face in accessing early intervention services. Now, while these topics are very different and very distinct, in each case, our scholars found themselves on an unexpected journey that changed their futures and can guide us too. So our first Make Your Mark talk will be presented by Jayme Hentig. He's a 2020 Tillman Scholar and an Army veteran. And Jayme joined the Army and began his career as a medic in Afghanistan, only to find himself dealing with his own traumatic brain injury. After his medical retirement, he found himself in the lab researching ways that he can improve others and outcomes for, how he can improve others' outcomes for veterans and for other folks who are managing TBI like he is. Jayme, we are thrilled that you're here.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. We've all sat in the doctor's office. It is cold and there is the crinkle of the paper, and you wait. You wait and you wait and you wait because doc is never on time. And sometimes they come in and it's quick. Hey, your physical was just fine. Come back and see me next year. But other times they walk in and they say, sit down. We need to have a talk. And you see, I have been present at the moment of injury for other service members. The exact moment that would end up ending their military career. And that was because I served as a medic. But during my time in Afghanistan, I witnessed and treated dozens of traumatic brain injuries. And then after a vehicle rollover, I experienced one myself, which led to a year of in and out of the hospital and seeing neurologists and neurosurgeons. And I found myself sitting in that doctor's office waiting, only to be told that I would be medically retired for a head and spinal injury. You see, I loved the Army, I really did. I wanted to make it a career, but life changed, and I was told, go find a new life trajectory. Okay, I was 22. I came from a blue-collar family. I'm now dealing with seizures and headaches and impulse issues. So new life trajectory, what does that actually mean? So after a series of failed jobs, I decided I will try school. And that was a big deal for me because not only was I about to become a first-generation college student, but the reality is I didn't join the Army because I came from a lineage of service members. I didn't have this innate calling to serve. I was 17 and I was more afraid of a college classroom than I was of an active war zone. And joke's on me because I had been in college for the last 10 years. But nevertheless, I went, still scared, and now with this laundry list of neurological deficits. But with some help from my professors, it turns out I wouldn't do so bad. But I remember sitting in one of my classes, and we were talking about Santiago Cajal. He is the modern-day godfather of neuroscience, who in 1928 said, in the adult centers, the neuropaths are something fixed, ended, immutable. He said everything will die and nothing may be regenerated. And I was shook. I immediately was brought back to that doctor's office, and I remember being told that there are medications and therapies to help me manage the symptoms of my TBI, but I'm always going to experience these issues. Fortunately, there's a second half to Cajal's quote, and it's what brings me here today. For he next said, but it is for the science of the future to change, if possible, this harsh decree. When I was sitting in that class, I was a pre-med student. I was doing well in all the right classes. I did research, internships, volunteered, and I would have made a great physician. But I remembered feeling helpless. I remember being told, I'm sorry, there's just not much more that we can do. And I realized that I was more interested in developing new therapies than I was in prescribing the current ones. And so that is what I am hoping to do. So I pursued my PhD at the University of Notre Dame with a focus on neuroscience and regenerative medicine. But when we're talking about creating new therapies, what we're actually talking about is biomedical research. Now, most TBI research is conducted in rodents, rats, mice, and they're great models. But they're expensive, they're time-consuming, and they do not have the ability to regenerate, which limits us to investigate only the injury itself. Whereas I work in adult zebrafish, this tiny little fish, but their brain is very similar to us in structure and function, but most importantly, they are extremely regenerative. From the moment they're born until the very end, they can regrow their eyes, their heart, their brain. Almost everything can regenerate. Using them, I've developed a novel brain injury model using the most common mechanism of injury found in humans, and that's just a good old-fashioned bump on the head, where just like people, my zebrafish experience consequences, things like seizures and brain bleeds, learning and memory issues. So we too can investigate the injury as well as the recovery as they start to regenerate a few days later. And that is what you see here. Those white dots on the right are injury-induced adult stem cells. This is a regenerating zebrafish brain after a traumatic brain injury. Now, one of my goals was to get a better understanding of the gene regulation that leads to this regeneration. To put simply, you can think of genes as a series of light switches where some are turned on and off across your entire life. What I want to know is, in the zebrafish, which ones are turned on and off and when, that allows them to replace lost and damaged brain tissue. Through this, we've identified one of these genetic pathways that when we turn it on before the injury, it's like the injury never happened, making it a potential therapeutic for at-risk populations like service members that we know are deploying and going outside the wire. And this is exciting, it really is. But it's still preclinical, it's still in animals, and likely decades away from being utilized in human populations. Furthermore, while blunt force trauma, that good old-fashioned bump in the head, is the most common globally, for our military community, it is blast injuries. Wanting to continue my service out of uniform and return back to my military community, as a postdoctoral fellow, I will be investigating repeated blast exposures and their association with clinical and physiological response, as it might relate to active duty service members, veterans, also athletics. My goal here will be to advance biological tools to identify injury, track symptom risk, and continue to identify potential therapeutic targets. I want to leave you with this today. The saying is, courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to do it anyway. That is a lot easier when you have help. I have gone from patient to PhD to researcher because I've had so much help. So what I ask of you today is to think about what barriers you might experience, whether they're internal or external, and what are you doing to ensure that those that come after you are not facing the same thing. Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jayme. Our next Make Your Mark talk is by 2017 Tillman Scholar Dave Prakash. Dave is a doctor, a pilot, an MBA, and now works in artificial intelligence and machine learning in healthcare. That's what Dave does. It isn't who he is. In his talk, Dave will reflect on the role that connectedness played in his own journey to this realization that who you are isn't what you do, and the reasons why we all need to embrace finding connectedness with ourselves and each other. Dave?
Thanks, Alex. How would you describe yourself if you couldn't mention your job or where you work? That's the question Ross and I asked each other this summer. Ross, he and I, we knew each other in high school. We played football, but we really haven't kept in touch since. But when I was visiting my hometown this summer, I reached out and we got lunch. And for 90 minutes, we talked about our lives. We shared our values, our setbacks, and our priorities. But we spent very little time talking about our jobs. And it became clear, Ross and I are very different people. We've lived very different lives. but that didn't get in the way of us finding a sense of connectedness with one another. Connectedness, it's that feeling you get, that good feeling when you're with someone that can step out from behind their resume, their accomplishments, their status, almost like they're stepping out from behind a mask that we all wear. But don't confuse connectedness with connections. Connections are superficial and transactional, and that's what you do on social media. Connectedness starts from within, your true self, when you live as you are, without fear, hesitation, or doubt. And when you can do that, you can make room in your life for people that are very different from you. Now, there's a lot of things that get in the way of finding connectedness. One of those is simply getting caught up in ambitions, especially when those ambitions are defined and highly valued by the people around you. In my life, I decided I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon when I was 15 years old. And so for the next 10 years, I focused all of my efforts on getting into an orthopedics residency. You see, becoming an orthopedic surgeon became my identity, right up until the 4th year of med school when they told me I wasn't going to make the cut. Now, I know that's not the worst tragedy to befall a human being, and so I found another specialty to go into. Life was going to be good. But during that residency, the US was going to war after 9/11, and I decided I wanted to serve in a combat role. And so I resigned from my residency and applied to the Air Force to go to pilot training without telling them I was a doctor, all at the tender age of 30. And so for the next 2 years, I focused all my efforts on becoming a fighter pilot, just like all the other hotshot 22-year-olds in the program with me. And after 2 years, they told me, "You're not handsome enough to be a fighter pilot." So I became a bomber pilot. But at least I'm prettier than those cargo pilots. And for the next 10 years, I worked my way up. I became an operational test pilot, and I even convinced the Air Force to let me work as a flight surgeon. I was now one of 9 pilot physicians in the entire Air Force. And look, I'm proud of doing the things that I did where I combined being a doctor and a pilot. But the experiences that are really near and dear to me, the things that happened that I'm most proud of, didn't happen in the jet, and it didn't happen in the clinic. It was the times when I stood up for the people that served beside me, even when it upset the bosses above me. You see, on more than one occasion in my career, what I knew was right from wrong was at odds with senior leadership. I was forced to pick to do the things that I knew, between what I knew was right and what they expected me to do. And it was through these really painful moral injuries that I discovered flying planes, taking care of patients, it's what I do. It's not who I am. And that liberated me. That freed me. That's why I was able to pack up my family and after 12 years in the military, go to business school without a clue of what I might do afterwards. And now, being in the private sector, I don't fly planes, I don't see patients, but it's even more clear to me now than ever before. What you do isn't who you are. And who you are doesn't have to define what you do. Look, ambition, drive, and landing a high-powered job, these are all great things. The problem arises when telling people about your job becomes more fulfilling than actually doing your job. Now, if you're a Wall Street banker, or maybe you're a big-time management consultant, or maybe you work for one of the big tech companies, it feels great to tell people that's what you do. I mean, it elicits a sense of awe and respect from everyone around you. But if that's all you're getting from your job, it's like eating artificial sweetener. Artificial sweetener, it tastes great, but it has no nutritional value. And so if that's all you're consuming, you're going to end up malnourished. And that's why it's so important that you be still. Listen for that whispering, fleeting voice in your head. Your true self that wants to live as you are without fear, hesitation, or doubt. And if you find that voice, embrace it. Run with it, because that's what's going to empower you to see the world in a totally different light. You can see that it's not a zero-sum game. It's not you competing with 7 billion other people. It's just you competing against yourself to be a little better than you were the day before. And when you're able to see the world in this way, you're able to make room in your heart and in your mind for all of the people around you, no matter how different they are from you. Now, finding connectedness with yourself and the people around you, it's not easy. It's hard. It takes time and it takes work. But like every great journey, it begins with a single step. And so I want to offer all of you one step you can take today to find that connectedness. The next time you meet someone, I want you to introduce yourself without mentioning your job or where you work. Share who you are without explaining what you do, because connectedness is what each of us really needs. It's what this country needs, and it's what the world needs right now.
Tillman Scholar and last year's Make Your Mark recipient. The Make Your Mark Award recognizes scholars for embodying the values of service, scholarship, humble leadership, and impact in their work in daily life. It is my honor to introduce this year's Make Your Mark awardees, the Tillman Scholars involved in the evacuation and resettlement of our Afghan allies. As a veteran of the war in Afghanistan, I am grateful and humbled by the work this community has done on behalf of our Afghan partners. Many have leveraged their personal networks, from fellow scholars and government contacts to NGOs and caring citizens, to evacuate and resettle hundreds of allies from Afghanistan. And today, many Tillman Scholars continue the necessary and important work of supporting those who remain in Afghanistan, while also aiding those trying to establish themselves here in the United States and across the globe. This year, Tillman Scholars Rick Schumacher, Junaid Lughmani, and Kate Hoit will be accepting this award on behalf of those in our community who rose to action. 2010 Tillman Scholar Rick Schumacher enlisted in the Army while still in high school and served as a psychological operations specialist. Today, we recognize Rick's dedication as a servant leader. Rick was responsible for founding an online network using Slack, where American veterans, citizens, and supporters coordinated efforts to evacuate hundreds of our Afghan allies. Our second awardee, Junaid Lughmani, is a 2021 Tillman Scholar and first-generation American whose parents emigrated from the tribal areas of Northwest Pakistan. Junaid volunteered to become a civilian Pashto interpreter for the United States military in Afghanistan and later joined the Army after he returned home. Throughout his career, Junaid has been uniquely positioned to provide guidance on Afghan and Islamic culture. He continued to do so during Digital Dunkirk, helping to evacuate our Afghan allies as they sought refuge in flights out of Kabul's airport. And the final recipient accepting this year's Make Your Mark Award is Kate Hoit, a 2012 Tillman Scholar and Army veteran who enlisted at 17, working as a writer and photojournalist. Witnessing the realities of war changed Kate's perspective about life and the world around her, igniting a passion for her to write for the New York Times, Huffington Post, and Time magazine. Today, Kate is being recognized for her humble leadership and efforts welcoming our Afghan partners at the airport, organizing wish lists, and dropping off donations to those in need. Together, these three Tillman Scholars demonstrate how members of our community rose to the occasion by taking decisive action to help the Afghans who served by our sides. On behalf of this community, I would like to thank Kate, Junaid, and Rick, and everyone for the continued service and dedication. You all embody Pat's legacy of service beyond self and stand as a testament to the selfless impact this community has on the world.
After watching my fellow scholars work on building resources for our allies being evacuated to the US from Afghanistan, I decided that we needed to be able to collaborate efficiently. So on August 15th, I created a workspace on Slack. Coincidentally, this was also the day that Kabul fell to the Taliban, and the efficiency that I had hoped for would take on a whole new level of importance in the life and death decisions for our allies still in harm's way. What started off as a way for some fellow scholars to help coordinate relief efforts quickly grew to more than 1,800 users working 24 hours a day, attempting to get allies through Taliban checkpoints onto Hamid Karzai International Airport and manifested onto evacuation flights. The Slack quickly became a central node in what became known as Digital Dunkirk, with on-the-ground information on gate closures and access times, terrorist threats, Taliban activity, and other important information almost instantaneously being cascaded. This real-time collaboration and information sharing was critical and saved lives. For example, the terrorist bombing at Abbey Gate on August 26 was being reported on the Slack moments after the blast. Because of this, I was able to stop a family I was working with directly from continuing their journey to Abbey Gate that day and kept them out of harm's way. This type of scenario played out day after day, hour after hour, in every corner of the Slack, resulting in hundreds, if not thousands, of our allies assisted and evacuated. Once I ended operations on September 1st, I took stock of what we had accomplished. Early on, I came up with the saying, every win is a big win. I created a place where we could share those wins on the Slack. Though only representing a small fraction of allies we were ultimately able to help, the wins lift my spirits every day. I read them. I want to quote one simple post for you now. We got 10 out. Without the help of this group, I don't know if they would have made it. Without the unquestioning support of businesses like Salesforce, Slack, ID.me, and others, we would not have been successful. This was due in part to the credibility of being a Tillman Scholar. That name means something. Without many fellow Tillman Scholars like Christina Fishback, Trish Carter, Heather King, Marion Taylor, Vivian Paleth, Alicia Morrison, Adrian Kinsella, and so many others taking leadership roles immediately, I would have been lost and overwhelmed. This award is theirs. Without the Pat Tillman Foundation, donors, and friends like you, and ultimately the dedication of Marie, Alex, and the rest of the foundation to us Tillman Scholars and the legacy of Pat, we would not have had the capacity to stand up with each other in such a meaningful way. Thank you for your continued support.
Na'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I stand here in front of you, a Pashtun, a distant son of the soil of Lughman, and proud son of a mother who educated women across the northwest frontier. I stand here as just one man offering my gratitude, but really, there are multitudes standing with me. I'm carrying the message from this work and from my service in Afghanistan that when we stand together, we can make the impossible possible. Let me tell you why. Despite having just started an MBA program, I volunteered to assist Digital Dunkirk. During my years of service in Afghanistan, despite the gravity of our mission, despite being at the center of powerful forces that could inflict pain, I received the greatest gifts of love, generosity, care, and goodness from the people of Afghanistan. The children who would call me Kaka, the elders who treated me like their own son, the chai guy who would always have a sweet smile and a funny joke when bringing in our tea. Afghans embraced us, broke bread with us, and taught us the power of human connection. They truly became our brothers and sisters, giving so much of themselves. They reached out beyond the boxes that divide us, despite judgment from peers and warnings from family members. They gave their all and transformed the fate of their land into one that offered hope for generations to come. And as I sat through valuation lectures, read through spreadsheets and assessments, I wondered, how do we value hope? Our dreams cannot be summed up by a formula in a little box. Our hearts belong in the in-between spaces, the spaces of uncertainty, of fear, but also the spaces of hope. That is where we go when we are searching for something greater. The Afghans who changed my life stepped out into the in-between spaces. And if they could do that, given all they were up against, I decided that I would also choose the in-between spaces. I would work with whoever showed up to do whatever we could to help as many people as we could. We may be thousands of miles away from Afghanistan, but Afghanistan is within us. Each of our lives have been touched by its culture, by the land, by the people who have stepped outside their predestined box to meet us as friends. Unfortunately, as we sit here right now, more than half the population in Afghanistan is running short of food, with winter fast approaching, and logistical challenges to deliver aid lie ahead if we do not act before the weather turns. While politicians debate ownership of this tragedy, a humanitarian crisis has unfolded, and innocent people are dying. We can say there's nothing we can do, the forces are too powerful, or we can step into the in-between space. I urge you to stay in the spaces where you're not supposed to be. There's a saying in Farsi, Dil be dil ra dare. From one heart to another, there is a way. When we open our hearts, there's always a way. Thank you.
On August 7th, my mom, my husband, our 3-year-old daughter, and I drove to the Sacramento airport to welcome the first Afghan family arriving from Fort Lee, Virginia. We made welcome signs in Pashto and Dari and waited their arrival. They deserved a hero's welcome, the same many of us received after returning home from deployment. A father who served alongside U.S. forces for over a decade, a mother, 4 young girls made their way down the escalator. They were exhausted yet relieved. We placed our hands on their hearts and welcomed them to their new home. This family of 6 arrived with just 4 suitcases. We knew that they need help adjusting to life here, so I started an Amazon wish list. With the help of Tillman Scholars, friends, and people from Twitter and Facebook, the list sold out in just 2 hours. Everything from bunk beds and mattresses for the girls, a bed for their parents, clothing, tablets, toys, and household essentials were purchased. As we settled this family into their new apartment, we knew that others were still in need, so the support did not stop there. For the past several weeks, we have borrowed neighbors' trucks and rented U-Hauls and picked up and delivered furniture across Sacramento. Rick flew in from Texas to help. Joe, another Tillman scholar from the Bay Area, drove up a U-Haul filled with furniture. Junaid took a family on a shopping spree and is currently standing up donation drives at universities across the country. We have leaned on members of the community for hot meals, ride, even dentist appointments. We have had English lessons and kitchens and pizza and dance parties in living rooms. We have purchased diapers for a 15-day-old baby girl. We have donated sewing machines, strollers, car seats, TVs, and bikes, all members of the community coming together to help those who have stood by us for 20 years. As veterans, spouses, family members, and caregivers, our lives have been shaped by these wars. I followed friends on deployments. I've seen the impact of war on them and their loved ones, both physically and mentally. I've seen the lives lost. I think many of us felt this deep sadness watching the current events unfold. But with the outpouring of love and support for these Afghan families, I've grown hopeful and grateful. As Junaid said, from one heart to another, there is a way. When we open our hearts, there is always a way. We will continue to open our hearts and do whatever we can. Thank you for inviting me here today. I am honored and I am humbled. This award is for the foundation, those who have donated and shared their time, and continue to welcome our newest Americans. Thank you.
One more time. They're amazing. So thank you, Kate, Junaid, and Rick, for those insightful words and the work you've done to make a difference for our allies and friends from Afghanistan. What we saw this summer was the legacy of Pat in action, a community coming together to support a better future for others in any way possible. So many of you were a part of Digital Dunkirk. You didn't back down. You refused to accept the status quo. And no matter the intensity of the challenge, you stepped up. We're grateful to all of you for your leadership and service to make a difference in the lives of these families. So finding a way to make a better future also defines the work of our final Make Your Mark presenter today, 2020 Tillman Scholar, Sadia Heil. Sadia's parents immigrated to the United States in the 1980s, and her experience as the daughter of immigrants made her reflect on the challenges that so many families face in accessing services for their children, something that she felt deeply when she pursued early intervention services for her son. Sadia, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. My parents came to the United States in the early 80s from Pakistan. Dad came first to lay a foundation, and Mom and my sisters followed. Just look how excited my mom was the day my dad left to pursue the American dream. By the late 80s, Mom and Dad and their 7 children had established themselves in Northern Virginia. I'm number 6. Dad set aside his teaching career in Pakistan to drive a taxi, and Mom did everything else. My sisters and I lovingly call her Miss Shahida, calm, graceful, nurturing, charming, yet full of grit. Miss Shahida never had an issue telling anyone what time it was, in English, Urdu, or Punjabi. Her voice mattered. I still have no clue how she did it all, leaving her parents and siblings behind, moving to a new country, learning a new language, all while raising her family. While Dad was working, Mom navigated the health and education systems to ensure we had access to all the resources we needed. My academic career began at age 3 in a Head Start preschool program. When disadvantaged children receive high-quality birth-to-5 education, the rate of return on investing in a child's future can be as high as 13% annually. And it has impacts on health, crime, overall education, and quality of life. Equity matters. I grew up and ended up defying all traditional roles of a good South Asian daughter. I joined the Air Force. I married a Southern gentleman. And spoiler alert, I did not become a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. My husband and I now have two wide-eyed, wonderful children. First came our daughter, and 17 months later, our son. When he turned 1, my son wasn't speaking yet, and I grew worried. I voiced my concern to his pediatrician a few times over the course of about 3 months or so, and each time my worry was politely dismissed. He seems fine. But I persisted, and I finally received a referral to early intervention. My voice mattered. At the time, I didn't realize it, but I didn't actually need my pediatrician's referral because families can actually self-refer. Part C under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, referred to as early intervention, serves infants and toddlers from birth to age 3. These services include family training, home visits, occupational, physical, developmental, and speech therapy. About 2 months from referral, my son began early intervention. His therapist, Miss Robin, would coach us once a week. She'd give my son huge pillow squeezes, and together they would sing "Shane" from Moana. For communication, we started with the Picture Exchange Communication System, or PECS. We had symbols of my son's favorite items posted all over the house. He would hand us his preferred card, and in exchange, we'd give him what he asked for. Well, he caught on so quickly that we couldn't keep up with him anymore. So Robin then suggested using a high-tech communication system. My son would use an iPad with a specialized app on it, and that would help him communicate with the world around him. At first, as a mom, I was a little hesitant. If he used his talker, as we call his device now, would he be motivated to use his voice? I was wrong. My son received his talker, his expressive language took off, and he was so confident using his device. Accessibility matters. Miss Robin and early intervention changed the trajectory of my son's life. By age 3, he sang his ABCs, counted to almost 100. He could identify every planet in the entire solar system. I can't even do that. And he was reading. Today is his 5th birthday. Although communication can still sometimes be a challenge, he can read and write sentences now using his talker. His preschool teacher has me convinced that he's actually going to go on to win the National Spelling Bee, which is every South Asian parent's dream. His voice matters. In moments when I dig deep and I advocate for my child, I think of my mother. In South Asian culture, you usually don't question the pediatrician or the teacher who forgets to add your child's communication device to his education plan. As I pursue my graduate degree in special education, I plan to delve more into the intersectionality between race and ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and disability. My passion is in advocating for others, and I hope to help more families access early intervention. I also want to explore ways providers can be more empathetic and culturally competent. This means understanding the individual, their family, their community, and surrounding beliefs. For example, many interventionists emphasize eye contact. Eye contact, eye contact, eye contact. Did you know that in some cultures, direct eye contact is actually a sign of disrespect? Cultural competence builds trust and credibility. So, what can you all do to help? Listen with empathy. If someone you know expresses concern about their child's development, support them. Validate them. As a college-educated Air Force officer, I stalled for a few months on beginning services for my own child because I didn't listen to my gut. Remind them their voice matters. Today, there are Miss Shahidas, caregivers navigating the healthcare and education system all over the country. What if these families need access to early intervention services? Low-income communities of color still face obstacles to opportunity, such as accessibility and socioeconomic barriers. For many, this starts in early childhood. In Illinois, early intervention served nearly twice as many white children as Hispanic children, and 4 times as many white children as it did black children in 2018. These families, they deserve our attention, and they deserve our advocacy. Their child's future depends on it.
Thank you, Sadia, for sharing your voice and your experience. It matters. We're grateful to have you in this community. My name is Dan Futrell. I'm the CEO of the Pat Tillman Foundation and also 2011 Tillman Scholar. It's my complete honor today to introduce you to our Champion Awardee. We annually give the Tillman Champion Award to someone who lives our values of scholarship, of service, of humble leadership, and of impact. This award is also meant to celebrate Pat's living legacy and the belief that we can all serve a purpose bigger than ourselves. In a world today dominated by headlines that may not be as optimistic about humanity as maybe we'd like, from relative inaction on climate change to the ongoing work to support Afghan allies, it's the collective work here to serve others that reminds us to keep pushing forward. No one better represents this unending drive for human rights, for belief that we can all make a significant and positive impact in the lives of others than our Tillman Honors champion, Ms. Fawzia Koofi. Over decades and to this day, Fawzia has fought for human rights for Afghan women and girls in a country where that fight was desperately needed, often putting her own life in great danger. Fawzia's story is uncommon because of her strength and resolve, but the challenges she's faced as a woman in Afghanistan are far too familiar. Fawzia was born in the Badakhshan province in northeastern Afghanistan, a province about twice the size of Vermont with nearly the same population density at just over 1 million people. Fawzia's mother had hoped for a son, and out of desperation upon her birth, desperation and disappointment, she left Fawzia out in the sun to die the day that she was born. But Fawzia did not die. Instead, she grew into one of the most devoted and well-known women's rights activists in Afghanistan. She was the first girl in her family to go to school, and she went on to earn degrees from Kabul University and the University of Diplomacy from Geneva, Switzerland. Fawzia then worked for international aid groups, including UNICEF, where she served as a child protective officer shortly after the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan from 2002 until 2004, supporting the right that every child has to live free from violence, exploitation, and abuse. At the same time, and immediately after the fall of the Taliban, she campaigned for the right of Afghan girls to be educated in her Back to School campaign. In 2005, she was elected as the Vice President of the National Assembly of Afghanistan, and later was chosen as the country's first female Deputy Speaker of Parliament. For her leadership and advocacy for human rights, for women's rights, the Taliban targeted her multiple times with assassination attempts. Undeterred, Fawzia leads the Movement for Change Party and is the first woman to lead a political party in Afghanistan and was one of 4 women to negotiate with the Taliban after the United States announced our withdrawal. You can read more about Fawzia's story in her New York Times bestselling memoir, The Favored Daughter. We'll have a copy for you on the way out. Please take a look. As much as I've shared her accomplishments to date, what's most inspiring about Fawzia is her future and the drive that she still has to serve those in Afghanistan. Like our Tillman Scholars, she believes that her best impact, the biggest impact she's going to make in her life, is in the future. That day hasn't come yet. She's currently without a permanent home as she's continued to call attention to the plight of women in Afghanistan while the world is threatening to look away and move on. The fight for human rights and for Afghanistan, her home that she plans to return to as soon as possible, will continue to be important so long as the rights of women are restricted by the Taliban. She spent the last 2 months speaking to the UN and European leaders across the world and elsewhere across just the world, to pressure the Taliban to respect the rights of women for access to education and to work, basic human rights that many Tillman scholars in this room have fought for.
Fawzia is an inspiration to me, to us, to our community, and to the world because of her determination to fight for what's right at great personal risk to herself. Throughout her work, she has leveraged her personal story to bring attention to this cause, but has not made herself the center of this story. She serves selflessly and with humility and with an intense commitment to impact. While her visa wasn't approved in time for her to join us today, on behalf of the Tillman Scholar community, on behalf of Marie Tillman and our board, on behalf of everybody in this room, I want to introduce you to Miss Fawzia Koofi from Geneva, Switzerland. Fawzia. Fawzia, can you hear us? We will reach out to her and make sure she can hear us. I'll share this with you while we're getting in contact with her. We have interacted with Fawzia numerous times in preparation for today. She is, Fawzia, can you hear us?
Speak with this wonderful platform, and I would like to thank the organizers for this very timely event, especially for what's going on in Afghanistan and the situation of people in general, but the situation of women in particular, for giving me the platform to raise the voice of voiceless people, especially the women from Afghanistan. I also thank you for recognizing me with Pat Tillman Foundation's Champion Award. I cannot be more proud than receiving such an award at this time that we are closing a chapter and we are opening a new chapter, a chapter of friendship, solidarity, walking together in the rocky roads, losing blood and treasure, investing our time, investing our energy for a cause that actually worth it for the same reasons that we experience now. When in 2001 the U.S. troops came to Afghanistan, a lot of anti-war movements justify their cause and spoke about or against the situation. But I know that the fact that you have actually invested your treasure and your soldiers and your Marines and your men and women, along with people of Afghanistan, being in the full front of everything, they invested their blood, and that actually brought a lot of change. It was for a good cause. As a result of the blood, like Pat Tillman and others, unknown voices, unknown names that we don't know them, but we remember them and we appreciate them. That schools are open in Afghanistan, that health clinics are open, that women can participate, could participate in social political life, that life has changed. And in fact, I remember when in 2001 the foreign troops came to Afghanistan, as a woman, at least many of us had the liberty to walk in the streets of Kabul without a fear, without the fear of being oppressed, without the fear of being pressurized by the Taliban, without the fear of being whipped in the streets of Kabul. We could breathe normally. This was a fight that it was for a freedom. And those who actually invested their life, those who invested their blood, are remembered. In fact, many years since the active war, many years since people like Pat Tillman lost their lives, but we have an empowered generation in Afghanistan. So it's not that only their presence in Afghanistan actually resulted in schools and health clinics and 11 million children in school and 40% of which are girls, but also empower the generation, empower them to stand in protecting their rights, to stand for a prosperous and peaceful Afghanistan. And that's why today, when the same oppressive power is back to power in Afghanistan, you see that people protest in the street. You see that these women, these empowered generation actually utilize their rights. And I think that's a major achievement of the last 20 years, I would say, and especially with those lives that we lost. So I am honored to be part of this platform, and I hope that together, now that they are no longer with us, we will continue to keep their cause alive, a cause for freedom, for liberty. And we hope that things would have been managed differently, especially when it comes to withdrawal, that we could avoid the situation that we see now. However, we know that things were managed in a different way, and today we see a collapse of institutions in Afghanistan. A lot of people are actually losing their not only lives, but their freedom. A lot of people are actually losing everything they have in Afghanistan. So things are reversing. The situation have become to a point where now, again, the same power, the same abusive power is in charge, and we are left in the midst of worse and bad options. And the option for us is either to live in that situation, to be oppressed, to be deprived of all the opportunities, or to choose a different path. And the path is to leave the country. And it has been bumpy. It is not a nice situation. But I'm sure with all your efforts and people around the world with good intention, we will be able to restore democracy in Afghanistan once again. So I thank you once again for this opportunity, and I hope that that this recognition will give more voice to the women of Afghanistan, to the people of Afghanistan. Thank you very much.
Ms. Koofi, I think she can still hear us. I just want to say thank you for accepting this award, and thank you for your continued service. Let's give her another round of applause.
Fawzia, as Dan said, thank you for so many of our scholars and so many of us today. The events that are currently happening in Afghanistan weigh heavily on us. And we are so inspired by your passion, your tenacity, your tirelessness. So, as Dan said, on behalf of our foundation, our leadership, our board of directors, you truly are a champion. Please remember that is one of Pat's favorite words. And we are very grateful that you were able to join us. Your passion, your unwillingness to give up on fighting for what you believe in, it's a quality that Pat possessed as well, and you are an outstanding example of the type of leadership that we need in the world today. And that brings us almost to the end of Tillman Honors. We do have one last ask of you. So this is a special day and a celebration, but we've also got a fun new tool that we would like to test and make sure that it works. And we think you're the right people to help us. All right, so we're kicking off our annual campaign next week, and with the theme, Commit to Impact. I think you saw some examples of men and women who have certainly made an impact and have committed. So we're going to ask you to do the same. So we've invested in a text to give program. And so let's see if it works. So if you can please take out your phones and text Tillman to 50155. And then let's look up here and see if it's working. All right, it is working. So brand width strategy. Looks like they're in for $1,000. Keith Phipps, Ann Logue, awesome. Joe Shenton, of course, Joe. He's like one of my favorite brother-in-laws, I swear. So it looks like it's working. It's exciting. It's a great way to start this out. So a powerful way for us to kick off this program. And a reminder and an ask. If you have friends who want to learn more about us or support us, just tell them it's as easy as texting Tillman to 50155. Your support funds education and leadership development for a community of leaders, like the scholars you've met today and like Fawzia. They are making an important impact in the world, and they are leading like Pat led. So with that, and before we close and you head next door for our reception, we thank everyone who helped make this event possible. Marie thanked our team, but thank you specifically to our speakers, to Marie, to Dan, to Jamie, Dave, Sadia, and their powerful Make Your Mark talks. To Jackie Munn, and just as a quick aside, her nephew plays football with my son. It's just an awesome small world and a wonderful, amazing connecting that Pat continues to do. So to Jackie Munn and Dan Futrell, to our honorees, to Rick, Junaid, Kate, Fawzia, thank you for inspiring us to fight to make the world a better place every day and to demand a just world for everyone, no matter their background or beliefs. Thank you for supporting our Afghan allies, friends, and family. And again, to our presenting sponsors at the National Football League and to our investors and supporters, we appreciate your support in advancing our mission and holding today's event. To the amazing and incredible staff at the Pat Tillman Foundation, thank you for your hard work today. Thank you for your hard work yesterday. And importantly, thank you for your work each and every day in carrying forward Pat's legacy. Thank you. And thank you, lastly, to all of us for joining us, whether you were here with us at City Hall Event Center or online. So your support today and in the years ahead continues to grow this community of leaders. We're now at over 750 Tillman Scholars. Whether this was your first Tillman Honors or it's an annual event that you never miss, we appreciate your support in our mission so that we can continue to collectively make our mark and lead through action. Thank you. We'll see you next door.